Hello and welcome back to IllumiNation, the Disney Lorcana podcast. My name's Max.
And I'm Sam.
And we are back again, episode 51 this time, nearly the 2-year mark for IllumiNation. Woohoo! We are talking about tournaments this time. We are talking about best practices, making recommendations, overall just being a good opponent and the best player you can be with concern to tournament-specific pieces, not so much strategy or deck choices. We're coming up on DLC Richmond, so we figured now is a good time to chat about it. Hopefully we'll see you there because we're making it to our first ever DLC. Yeah. Woohoo!
Woohoo!
We are going to be playing. I'm still trying to snag a competitor badge, hoping that somebody will not be able to make it a little closer to the tournament. I can swoop in and become a competitor myself, but as of right now, I'll be an attendee. Sam, you're going to be a competitor.
Yeah, I'm excited and nervous.
Yes, so I figure this is a good time to talk about a lot of these things, since it's important things to keep in the back of your mind at any tournament. Obviously, higher level tournaments, the more importance and the more worth calling out these topics become. So welcome on in. Let's get started with the clock. The clock. Always the clock. You got to make sure you understand these rounds are 50 to 55 minutes, depending on where you're at. In the pre-play meeting, the player meeting, the judge meeting, they will explain to you how long each round will be. So make sure you're listening and make sure you are taking your time, but you know your deck. You know what your turn one play is. You know what your general play patterns are. You shouldn't have to be hemming and hawing over specific choices in a matchup. You should already have a pretty good idea of what you're doing in a given matchup, right? That comes down to the practice element. All of the simple choices should be pretty quick. It is the turns that are difficult. You need to be able to give them the time you need to put the best further turns / the best patterns of play during those turns together. So you need to think critically about, probably, depending on the deck, maybe 3 to 5 turns in a game, tops. So the rest of the turn should be pretty quick. You should understand what you're doing for the most part. Those decisions shouldn't be too taxing. Obviously, don't rush. Take your time. I tend to be a little bit slower on the whole than you, Sam. You play on the faster side, I would say.
Yeah, I think I play a little quicker, but I also do think that I know which turns I need to take a little bit more time.
And by that same token, do not be afraid to keep your opponent honest. If your opponent is hemming and hawing and taking a little too long to make pretty simple decisions, you can gently nudge them. Sam, what are some ways that you like to nudge your opponent if you feel like they're taking a little bit too long or playing a little too slow for your taste?
One thing that I do is just point out how much time is left.
It's a great way to call it out.
I think it's the good first step.
Yeah, I think it's really good to gauge your opponent's pace of play, especially in game one, seeing how long they're taking for each decision. After the game's over, typically I'll say, hey, we need to play a little bit quicker. That was a 25-minute game. We need to potentially have time for 2 more games, especially if I lose, right? Like it's on me to steal 2 games. If my opponent's playing very slowly, I can't do that. So I will say, hey, let's just make sure we're playing intentionally through these next game or 2. Additionally, if we've played the first couple of games quickly and I have an opponent who's playing a little slower, sometimes you get somebody who's like, I'm really sorry, I'm just thinking. I'll just gently look over at the timer and say, you still got 18 minutes left and we're partway through game 3. I think we're good.
I do think you have to watch out for if you do lose game 1 and then your opponent starts going slower.
Yes.
Intentionally. You want to make sure you call that out or call a judge.
Absolutely. Don't be that person. And if you are playing against that person, be sure to call a judge over. And we'll get more into judge calls here in a minute. But I will also lightly just say, hey, could you just play just a little bit quicker if you don't mind? Or could you pick it up a little bit? There's times to do it, times to not do it. I don't really rush my opponents at locals. I'm not that worried about it. I usually don't at set champs. If there's a turn that they're being intentional, I'll leave them alone. It's usually showing habitual patterns that I'm worried about, right? Like just a slow player in general. Like you're taking a little bit too long, maybe majoring in the minors a little bit too often.
When turn 1 and turn 2 take several minutes each, it's kind of like, okay, we need to move it along.
Right, exactly. Like if you're on the draw with, let's just say, an Amethyst Steel deck and your opponent inks a Tipo, plays a Clarabelle, you know what you're playing against. You know what, if you have 2 1-drops in your hand, you know what 1-drop you're probably deploying in the matchup. If not, you've come to the event under-prepared, which is okay. You can't come to every event totally prepared, but you need to know at least the fundamentals of what you're doing, because you can't can't sit there for 35 seconds thinking over the next few turns to be able to ink and then play a 1-drop. It's just not something you want to spend your time on. Far more important to save that time for a critical turn where you're at an inflection point of the game and you want to make a decision that doesn't put you behind or can catch you back up or keep you ahead. So think about that.
I also think it's reasonable to say if you're completely out of a game and you know your deck and you know you have no options, you can scoop early to save that time, especially if it's been a longer game.
Yes. You want to be able to buy yourself as much of a chance to win the match as possible. Paying attention to the clock is certainly an important skill to develop over time. Another important part of the game is shuffling and cutting. This one, I'm coming from playing Magic for a long time, so I never gave this a second thought, but I know a lot of players who are new to trading card games or are coming from other trading card games to this game seem to have a little bit of a bugaboo with this next thing, which is the shuffling and the cutting. So you shuffle your deck and then you present it to your opponent to be cut. It is acceptable for your opponent to shuffle your deck when presented with your deck, so long as the shuffle is completed with a cut. So I take no insult if my opponent picks up my cards and shuffles them. That's me presenting them with, here are my shuffled, randomly arranged cards. If you would like to randomly arrange them more, now is your opportunity. But people in this game tend to get a little bit of a bugaboo if somebody picks up their deck and shuffles it. Sam, you don't like it when somebody shuffles your deck.
No.
Why not?
I think it's rude.
You think it's rude?
I also don't like when I don't riffle shuffle my deck. So I don't think somebody else should be riffle shuffling my deck.
I agree with you there. I think it should be a hand over hand shuffle. You hold the deck kind of like a packet in your hand so that it's laid kind of face down on the table. It'd be laid face sideways in your hand, and then you pick up part of that packet and push it back into the packet a couple of times. More standard side shuffle, and you don't need to go crazy, just a few times. What you're trying to do is make sure if your opponent's stacked or arranged their deck in a specific order, you are breaking that up. All you need to do, 10, 15 seconds, a couple packet shuffles, put it back down, complete with a cut. Yeah. Easy.
But if somebody does shuffle my deck, I'm shuffling theirs.
There you go. I think it's a smart idea in general to shuffle, because if my opponent just cuts, or you'll see this a lot where somebody will tap your deck and just go, you're good. A lot of players take that as a sign of like respect, or then they go, I need to repay that gesture in kind by tapping their deck. This is a pattern that less scrupulous players will use to encourage you to not cut their deck. So when you are at a higher level tournament, I encourage you to always cut. If you feel like shuffling is the right choice, you can do so. You can definitely hand your opponent the deck, present it a little bit, take a moment of hesitation to see what they do, and then do what they do. I would strongly advise you, unless you know the person well, to not do the tap. Just do a cut. No disrespect there. Even a shuffle, no disrespect.
I do a different cut almost every time. Typically, where
Right.
I'll do 3 sometimes. I'll cut like towards the bottom, then towards the top. I always switch it up, especially in higher level events.
It's smart to do it that way, because then that way you are less predictable overall. I would say don't be afraid to shuffle and cut. Definitely cut at the minimum unless you know the person.
Yeah, at locals, I'll do a tap or just
Yeah.
not even.
I'm not
worried about it. Yeah.
Yeah. The locals are what we're using to get practice and get the ability to do better at these larger tournaments. For some people who don't get to play locals that often, it can be a little bit more of a higher level thing. So if they feel the need to cut, I definitely will encourage them, please go ahead and cut.
Yeah.
And some people break the ice and laugh and just say, I like it when people cut my deck, so it's not my fault.
Right.
You know what I mean? Do something like that if you feel like it's warranted. It's not a bad thing to do.
Yeah, for us, our locals, we see at least once a week, sometimes more, and we just play all the time. So it's not a big deal. But definitely, if you feel like, even at any event, if you want to cut, just cut.
Yes, I encourage it strongly. Another thing that I encourage strongly, and I will make a blanket statement, which I'm not a big fan of, but I will say this. Players of Disney Lorcana do not call judges enough. They just don't call for a judge enough. I've been playing this game for a long time. You and I are generally regarded as some of the more knowledgeable players of the game in the area. We're definitely two people where if there is a question at another table and a tournament organizer at a local shop doesn't know the rules because they don't play Lorcana, they will come ask us.
Local crowd just will ask us a question before even asking some of the shop owners or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that that is fine. However, call a judge. Do not listen to me. I'm your opponent in a lot of cases. I may not be honest with you about a particular ruling, or I may pretend to not understand it. So there are definitely a lot of ways to interpret a card. I've been wrong about plenty of cards. I've been wrong about plenty of rules. It's not my job to be the arbiter of the rules. My job is to try to win the game against you. I'm not saying I should do anything. I'm saying that I may not know, or I may not be willing to divulge that information. So the best thing to do is use the resource the tournament provides you, and that is someone to come who's impartial and is a knowledgeable source of the rules to give a determination as to what should happen based on what was done at the table. Simple as that. If you have a question, call a judge. If you're not sure about something, call a judge. If you're 95% sure, if you're 99% sure, call a judge. If you're concerned about something, even if you think you're being insane, call a judge. When they come over, they are not, and I want to shout out our local judge, Vince, great guy. We talked a little bit at the last tournament we were at with him about judges in general, because he and I have a lot of play experience, and we were just kind of talking over how much judges are underutilized in this game, in my opinion. So I think that you should definitely call them over. He phrased it a really good way. They're not police officers. They're not coming over trying to get anybody in trouble or trying to catch a bad guy. They're customer service representatives. They're coming over to make sure that you have the fairest and funnest tournament experience that you can have as a player of the game who paid an entry fee to compete. So if you're competing in that tournament, you're no different than any other person competing in that tournament, and you deserve a fair shake. That's what the judges are there to keep the game fair for both players involved, with no subjective or bias opinion on anything. They're just coming in and saying, this is the way the rules lay it out. If you're worried about somebody doing something less than scrupulous, you can pull the judge aside and talk to them and say, listen, this might sound insane, but I really am just getting a weird vibe, or I've noticed a couple weird mannerisms from my opponent that are just making me a little bit uncomfortable. It's not like the judge is going to go, well, you better hope they do something wrong or you're in trouble for calling me over, Buster. That's not what the judge is going to say. The judge is going to thank you for it, and they're going to keep an eye on them. You may not have been the first player to call that judge over about this person. And the more we're doing that, the more of a case the judge has to build if something does go wrong with that particular player, right? They're building up possible intent if it's there. That's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to make sure everybody has a fair time and nobody's getting cheated. So don't think that because a judge is coming over, you've done something wrong. It could just be, hey, I went to draw a card and I knocked the top card of my deck over. What do we do? Don't both sit there and try to figure out a game plan. Call a judge over. They know exactly what to do. You're not going to call the judge over and they're going to go, well, you're banned from the tournament now. That's not how any of this works. And I really think that they have this negative stigma. If they get called over, somebody's getting in trouble. Somebody's getting a game lost. That's just not how it works. It's so ridiculously hard to get a game lost in Disney Lorcana. Like, it's one of the most forgiving rule sets I've ever seen. It's insane. Insane deck reg errors with 5 copies of cards when you're only allowed 4, not resulting in game losses. Mind-boggling to me. That's another point for another day. But I'm just saying, it all kind of leads into the judge is not there to get anyone in trouble. The judge is there to help make sure that what happens by the way of the rules. That's it. So I really think that on the whole, judges should be called more often than they actually are. I think there's too much table decision making. It goes back to step 1, which is the clock, right? Remember, a judge will grant you a time extension if it takes time for the judge to understand and resolve the issue. It's not uncommon for a 2 to 5 minute time extension for your game for the round because a judge had to come over and help maintain that everything was fair in that game. So I really think that we need to call judges more often than we are in general. So just don't be afraid of your judge.
I think also something, because we're going to the DLC coming up, I've seen a lot of people that don't know that they can appeal a judge call.
Yes.
So being able to go to a higher level.
Yeah, if you're not happy with what the judge says, if you're almost certain you know the rule and you go, the judge comes over and says something completely out of left field, and you're like, what? You can absolutely go, I'd like to appeal that to the head judge. And the head judge will come over and they will make an arbitration. From there, that's it. That's the final decision. You can't then appeal it again. You can't go, well, I'm going to look it up on my phone and show it to you. The final judge call is the call that will stand. But you are absolutely right. If it feels a little funky, call another judge. I mean, it kind of doubles down on it, right? If you don't like the judge call the head judge. I'd like to appeal to the head judge. If there's no head judge, it's a smaller event, there's only one judge, you're kind of stuck, but you got the head judge's ruling on this. So things can be looked at after the fact. You may have been right the whole time, but at that moment in time, we rely on the judge to make the call. So that's the important thing to do. Good call there on the appeal. So let's talk about a little less keep in mind, but just a good practice, which is something that our good friend and teammate Noah really got me doing set 3 I'd say, set 4 maybe, because I like to play a lot of Diablo decks, and I think like all players of Diablo, occasionally you'll miss a trigger. The way I've stopped missing triggers is it's not my turn. I put my hand down, face down on the table, away from my inkwell, away from my deck, away from my discard, and I sit and I watch my opponent take their turn.
I believe the phrase was, and pretend you're a good player.
I was going to leave that part out. But thanks for throwing the ass. That was the exact quote. Pretend you're a good player. Put your hand down. You're not taking any game actions on your opponent's turn in Disney Lorcana, so there's no reason to not just set your hand down.
Yeah, and Cliff, he will draw his cards and not even look at them.
Yeah, he's a psycho. He will just literally put them down in a pile and not know what's coming until it's his turn. But I don't have that level of patience. But there's nothing you can do on your opponent's turn. So the best thing to do is watch your opponent. There's a few reasons. Obviously, you can prevent any sort of manipulating or problematic things. It helps you be a little sharper and more engaged. It also lets you read your opponent's body language. Draw a card. Oh, I slumped down in their chair. Well, they didn't draw a good card, did they? They may not tell you that, but where you see them give a quick head shake. Things that signals and cues that get missed because you're so busy riffling around your cards in your hand, which I am totally guilty of. Coming from Magic, you can do things on your opponent's turn, so I constantly had my hand face up. I was thrown off people when I was playing Magic pre-releases because I would just set my hand down. And it's just well, I shouldn't necessarily be doing that Magic, but I know if I have 1 or 2 instances in my hand, it's limited, so it don't matter. But it is a good practice to put your hand down and keep an eye on your opponent just to see what cues they give you, make sure everything's on the level, and you're not worried, right? If you know if there's a good play, you watch what they do and you go, okay, I know what the card is. If I could dream up a card that's in my mind's eye, I want to see that card. You know it's important. You're not going to get lost in the sauce trying to work with what you have as much or trying to make a misplay. You're going to focus on the more overarching important part of the game. Okay, my opponents did this. Now it's on me to do this.
Yeah. I also think that just paying attention to them helps you keep track of how many cards they're drawing, how many cards are in their hands, and how many should there be.
Yes, absolutely. You want to keep your opponents honest, and this really helps you do it a lot. To wrap it up, the last thing I want to touch on is something I am not great at, and that is losing. I am a poor loser at times. I think a lot of players are. We're playing to win. We're paying, in some cases, quite a bit of money to try to win, right? We're staking our claim. We're saying, I have the skill set to do well at this game, and I'm willing to bet the tune of the entry fee. Makes sense that it's higher stakes. There's more on the line. There's more emotions running a little higher. Nothing, in my opinion, wrong with being frustrated at losing. I'm frustrated that I lost. There is a difference when that frustration and when that blame gets pointed at your opponent directly, and they are made to feel lesser, or they are being torn down or made to feel poor in some way because you lost. That's the line, right? Is, oh, I'm really upset that you top decked that dock. You know what I mean? That lost me the game. That is just an objective statement, sure. They had no cards in hand. They drew. They played dock, drew 2 cards, and then played all of them. You lost. It's happened to all of us. Happened to me so many times. That is okay to be like, oh, I really am just upset you drew that dock at the right time. There's a difference between that and saying, it must be nice to play sloppy and get rewarded with a dock off the top. That is not okay. That's belittling your opponent. That's making them feel lesser. There's no reason for that. Opponent should never feel attacked or feel like you are deliberately pointing out or making them feel bad for playing the game. You're both playing to win the game. So even if you're upset, even if you're aggravated, just good luck in the next round. GG's. Thanks for the games. There's nothing you can do about it. GG's. Good draw. That happens. Hope you play a little tighter next round. It's not okay. You shouldn't do those kinds of things to people. So be a better opponent. It's something I've been trying to work on as much as I can because nobody wants to feel bad. We're all here to try to win, whether we make the right choices or the wrong choices. Sometimes it's better lucky than good. But in a lot of cases, the person's going to have done enough decision making to get them to the point where they can win. Okay, maybe you didn't get outplayed. Maybe you got outlucked. Too bad. You still lost. You're playing a game that has a luck element built into it. I have bad news for you. You're going to get unlucky. Your opponent's going to get lucky from time to time. I have definitely lost to opponents who are inexperienced or clearly have put in less work to do well, but have just drawn very well. I'm sure all of us have. That's part of the game. That's why new players can play trading card games, because they have a leg up sometimes because they can play a deck where it's like, oh, I did pretty good. I got lucky. I mean, I drew the right cards and I played them the right way. That's all I needed to do. I didn't have to make too many tough decisions. As you get more experience in the game, you'll be able to do that more often and be able to back it up by making the right choices along the way. Whether they made the right choices, the wrong choices, be as gracious as you can in defeat. You can absolutely be frustrated you lost. I understand. And believe me, I am just as frustrated as anybody when they lose. But one thing I've not done to my knowledge is make my opponents feel like, besides Sam when we're testing, she rolled her eyes at me. But when I'm playing in a tournament, I've not made my opponent. I've definitely been like, wow, you drew insanely well. Or, man, I drew insanely poor. But I've never made my opponent feel bad. Like, you played like crap, though. That's not okay. There's no, what are you gaining from that? You've lost the match. You're not unlosing the match because you're now being mean to your opponent. So I think the takeaway from this is give yourself every possible way you can to do well and to maximize your ability to win a match. Don't be afraid to call the judge. Make sure you put your hand down when it's not your turn and watch your opponent. Make sure you're shuffling and cutting to make sure you eliminate any possibilities of them getting a little too lucky. And obviously pay attention to the clock. But at the end of the day, being a good player of the game means being a good winner and a good loser when those things come up. You'll get better. You'll be able to win the tournaments in time. It's just you're not going to win every one. Even if you're the best player in the room, you're not guaranteed to win. You have to bring the right deck. You have to draw the right cards. You have to do everything right. It's very hard to win a tournament, especially of a large scale size. There's so much more to it than simply skill. Skill's one element to that. So that'll do it for this week. Hopefully these tips will help you out a little bit more. Certainly the most common way to win yourself a game of Lorcana is to
Keep questing.